Welcome to the Renegade Report. I'm Jonathan.
And Ramon is present. And I think it's very important to note, Jonathan, despite being called a rapist, a land thief, a white supremacist.
A shivering white, I think, as well. Yes.
Hold on, sorry.
Are you messing
Goodness
up
gracious.
the recording again?
I had multiple windows open. Fuck. Okay, let's. Despite being called a rapist, a land thief, and a few other things, I've never punched someone in the face who have said those things to me, and I think more people should, start doing that because words are not actions, as a great friend of ours once said on Twitter.
I think it's just interesting to see that we've now escalated from actually MPs fighting each other in Parliament to them just fighting normal citizens on the street. I'm finding it quite entertaining that this is now spread outside of the parliamentary district, and average citizens are getting smacked in the face for allegedly looking at people the wrong way.
No, it's yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's all a little bit not Orwellian. That's the wrong word. It's like when you go someplace and that you think that you're on candid camera because you're asking a very simple thing. You're asking, oh, can I just change? Like I went to Woolworths the other day to change something, and it took the lady who was helping me forever to understand what I wanted to do. And I'm like, is there like a candid camera somewhere? Like, am I in this weird dystopian future where the usual things are becoming absurd? And that's what it feels like sometimes in this country when you got MPs punching people in the face because they look threatening, and then the MP is the victim in all this. It's mind blowing. It's superb.
Yes, well, interestingly enough, that very MP has labelled us a whole bunch of things. Apparently, we're losers, and something about us being small men. I think she's actually broken the DA's code of conduct by doing that, so that should be entertaining. But yeah, interesting times indeed.
I think it would be a good idea to start, testing the DA's code of conduct, ensure equality under the law, because we know that a few MPs have got into trouble, namely white ones for some reason, have got into trouble for tweeting up their thoughts about, Singapore and a few other places in the world, despite them being factually correct. Those MPs and those premiers at the time were reprimanded, so maybe it's time to test that regulation a little bit further.
Yeah, I think could be a good idea. It could be a good idea just to see if they uphold their standards. They haven't up until now. Certain people seem to get away with anything. In fact, some people get promoted by this behavior. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. So on to the first topic. Okay, this is really at random. I am really believing to think, and I've thought about this for a long time, but I think I'm almost certain that there is no turnaround for South Africa. There's no solution. There's no reform. There's nothing in the short and medium term that fills me with any sort of hope that South Africa will become, a growing economy, non-racialist, and all the rest of that good stuff that we talk about often. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm thinking, yeah, we passed the post and sort of just enjoy the slow ride down to not even oblivion, just to nothing, just another African country.
Yeah, I mean, we're done. I don't see any hope. I have been saying this for a long time. The thing is it's easy to say it, and maybe there are some indicators, and unfortunately, I'm not happy about this. But the reality is that there are just increasingly more and more indicators that I actually am correct. Maybe you were sort of hoping that Jacob Zuma was going to be gone, and that was going to be the thing that was going to pick us back up. And then he left, and well, things didn't really seem to change. But you said, well, Cyril needs a mandate. You followed the Bruce doctrine, and now Cyril's got his mandate, folks, and things are getting worse. The rand is progressively getting worse. I know we've discussed this on previous shows. That people have asked, what do we think is going to happen? And we've said it'll just keep sliding, 13, 14, 15, 16, and so on, with bumps along the way. and small recoveries. I don't see anything. The reality is that even if they had the best of intentions, you've got ESCOM, which is essentially bankrupt. You've got SAA, which is bankrupt. You've got a number of these organizations, SOEs, which are bankrupt. And the only way to fix those problems is to get rid of them. The ANC will not do that because it goes against their very beliefs. And so they will continue to bail them out. Unfortunately, they're bailing them out with money we don't have. And that only leads to one place, really.
Yeah, but it's not even just a political thing. I think politics is beyond the realm of salvation at this point. I think it's a cultural thing. I think we're just doomed to mediocrity. I mean, I've seen the future, and it's Mozambique. I don't foresee a civil war. I don't foresee anything to that magnitude. I just see just poverty and destitution, and people just grinding out a living, doing menial work. Nothing in the future for me looks like things will change. And because we need, as Franz said on this very podcast, you need fundamental change. Non-racialism, labor reform, I can't remember the other ones. But basically 4 of them, and drop EWC and drop the NHI and all that sort of stuff. Drop all of those in one go, and maybe we have a chance. Not even fucking one of them is even on the table. Not even even like something stupid like the carbon tax was signed into law like 3 weeks ago or a month ago or whatever the case might be. What is the point? It's either Cyril is playing a very, very fucking long game that no one knows when it'll even start, let alone end, or the guy's a moron, or he just doesn't give a shit. And I think possibly all 3 together is the real answer we're looking for. And if Cyril is your great hope, and you look at, okay, maybe the opposition, there's something. No, there's fuck all. They punch people in the face for looking funny. And then you got the hard left EFF. The only people left are like the Freedom Front Plus, really. And unfortunately, they're too few to make a real difference.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I think that I'm not convinced that we're a country of mediocrity in any real sense. I think that's very much been created by a completely dysfunctional government pushing very bad policies that have created a massive unemployed class, especially of young people. They've made business very difficult to do unless you're corrupt, essentially. And so, you combine all of these factors together, and it's really hard to sort of get out of the rut. And you've long sort of promoted we'll just sort of break up into our own little factions and do our own thing, and that is to some extent true, is what is happening in some places.
I remember when I first mentioned that to you, like, never.
No,
and now look at you, Jonathan. You've come over to the dark anarchy side. It's brilliant.
No, I'm not promoting it at all. I'm not saying
you should promote it. It's the only solution. What are you talking about?
It's not a solution in any real way. It's when everything breaks down. Yeah, okay, you buy bread from your neighbor because your neighbor happens to have some flour. That's what they do in Zimbabwe. They literally barter between neighbors for chickens and a little bit of bread here and there. But there's no great existence. There's no sort of functional society. There's in any real sort of Western first world sense. There's no functional economy, certainly, and everything just sort of breaks down. And I think that unfortunately there is no impetus from the government to either help the sort of South African project or to get out of the way, which would be the ideal solution. But look, if they wanted to help, they could turn Singapore and help. That government was very helpful in getting that country to where it is today, through quite rigid and hard stances on many things.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the Chinese, right? I mean, even if you want to have the glorious communism as your label, just fucking go Chinese, because you had lots of state intervention, very cheap labor, lots of exploitation, and basically you made shit that the world needed, like plastic and toys and the rest of it. And now the stuff's actually pretty good. I know, like for example, the top brands in the world, like Nike and Adidas, they use factories in China to make their top quality caps or shoes.
But where they can manufacture a shoe for $13 and sell it for $130 because They pay workers $1 an hour and or less, and there is no union, because if you start a union, you get shot, and that's it. End of story. And nobody asks questions. So I think South Africa is caught in this weird sort of place where it wants to be kind of what China is, to some extent, but we've got a whole bunch of things that China doesn't have. For example, unions. For example, a police force that is completely inept and wouldn't be able to enforce any real laws. A government that takes shit lying down from everyone who they shouldn't, like Julius Malema, for example. I mean, EWC shouldn't exist. The government should have turned around to that idiot at the beginning and said, "Fuck off. We're not doing EWC. It's a bad fucking idea. It's failed everywhere it's happened. And move on. Find another thing to scream about in Parliament." It shouldn't be an issue. It should never have been an issue. And on the positive side of things, neither should any of this race shit. The government should have turned around long ago and said, "We decided to follow a non-racial approach to our country, and if you want to make race an issue, you're going to be sidelined." End of story.
Yeah, I do quite like your romantic notions of South Africa.
I'm saying if you wanted to make it work, Ramon.
Right. I mean, because the NDR, we know the story very well by now. This is all part of the plan, and the problem with the plan is, the rest of us are in the way of the plan. The property owners, the gun owners, the factory owners, the people who produce, the people who pay taxes. They need us desperately, but we, hindrances to the plan, and we have private security guards because the police are shit, and we have private medical aid and I'm getting to that now. But now they're taking away all the stuff that was created by the market to replace state services like police, i.e. security companies and, security guards with weapons. And now they're saying, oh, by the way, if you're a security guard, you can have a revolver or a bolt-action rifle against people with FNLs, R4s and AK-47s, which are often from the police themselves, by the way. Those weapons are not in your usual private gun owners' safe, because they're very difficult to get, they're very expensive, and they are often not allowed to be used unless you have a dedicated shooting status, which is another thing entirely. There's maybe, I would argue, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 people with DDS in this country, and that they don't all have R4s, they don't have FNLs, and they don't have AK-47s. They have AR-15s, because that's a much better gun than those. But who uses FNLs, AK-47s, and R4s, Jonathan? I'm trying to think.
Couldn't tell you, Ramon. Must be only the criminals.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Now the police now the government wants the security guards to have revolvers and bolt-action rifles to shoot at people with R4s and
Well,
FNLs.
look, I mean, let's be honest. It's classic disarmament talk. This is no different to the discussion that happens amongst anti-Second Amendment activists in the United States. This is the no semi-automatic guns argument. And if you know anything about guns, which most people who are anti them don't, the majority of weapons sold in the world today are semi-automatic. Every single pistol that is sold pretty much is a semi-automatic weapon. And if you get rid of those weapons, or you limit them so that only the police, for example, could use semi-automatics, then even if you have a revolver up against a Glock 19, you're in trouble. So it's sort of a winding the wheel along. I heard a good point the other day made about how the left pushes society towards their point of view. You sort of find people who are completely against you, people who are not against you but not with you, people who are sort of inclined to your view, and people who are completely against you, and then you propose something that gets the people who are obviously people with you are with you, the people who are inclined to your view, you get them to come over so that they're completely with you, and you get the people who aren't with you but would be open to something you might say, just to come on to something. So you don't go ban all guns, for example. You turn around and go just the semi-automatics. And so what you do is you move three of the groups towards that goal. The one group is left behind. In America, it would be the American right, and so you've now got this large grouping which believes, oh, semi-automatics are bad, and that's how you run with it. And then once you've got that down, then you move on to the next step, and the next step would be all of them are bad. And this is happening, in the cultural wars on many levels. Yeah, we can go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why everyone needs to read The New Right by Malcolm Alice. I spoke about it a few weeks ago on this very show. And the argument by the New Right, of which the alt-right is one segment of the New Right, they say democracy is a progressive experiment. The whole thing is defined and determined by progressives towards a sort of utopia in the future, which is broadly socialist, really. But it's about controlling the hegemony and the ideas of a society. And you do that through democracy by gaining access to universities and by making sure that mainstream media is within your grasp, which they have done. So if you are, this is going to be a bit controversial, but if you are right-wing or conservative, you should actually not be a Democrat. You should actually be a monarchist.
Yeah, all right. You want to elaborate on you like the monarchy thing? I know you're quite a big fan of that.
Monarchies are great. What are you talking about?
You realize the American conservatives will disagree with you heavily on that point.
Yes, and American conservatives have no fucking principles, and we've been through this already. 40 years ago, against abortion, against gay rights, against everything. Now, the conservative case for gay rights, no. These people have no principles whatsoever, and they should be shamed. And I include Ben Shapiro et al. in that sentence, because these people have no bloody principles. They can say what they want. They don't have any.
All right, I don't agree with that, but I think that firstly, the anti-gay lobby in the United States with regards to the conservatives was very much driven by the evangelicals. So to say that the conservatives had no position, well, perhaps they didn't. I don't have enough detail of what people in the 60s were saying. I do know that what was being said by evangelicals, and they obviously were pushing a biblical stance on that position. Funnily enough, Ben Shapiro still pushes a biblical stance on that position. He just basically says he thinks it's still a sin. He just doesn't think it's his job to tell you what to do in your bedroom.
What does he say numerous times? I've actually become libertarian on this issue.
He's libertarian on a whole bunch of
the government shouldn't come into marriage at all. Shouldn't have a position on marriage, which I agree with. But that wasn't his position 10 years ago. That's what I'm saying. He doesn't really have any principles because he changes them.
No, he accepts that there's a reality to the society, and that things move contrary to exactly how he would like it to be, since he's not the king, right? I mean, he explained this the other day. He went through the marriage thing. The conservative position is that marriage is marriage. Firstly, has nothing to do with the government, and is between a man and a woman. But the position moved in society to the point where it was like the government controlled marriage, and then gay people were like, well, government controls this thing and it can't discriminate between the two. And so the conservative position was like, yeah, you kind of are right. The government can't discriminate on that position. So I don't want to straw man the guy too much, given that he won't come on our show, even though we've invited him.
Yeah, we have. I mean, really, if he has anything else better to do. But I mean, if you had a principled argument against gay marriage, you would say, right from the very beginning, government has no involvement in marriage in the first place. He should be fighting that, not saying the difference between gay marriage and whatever heteronormative marriage is this, and this is what it should be. You should just say government shouldn't have a thing at all. And people, as a conservative position, should be about people can largely form groups around whatever values they want. Because that is a conservative position, not a progressive one. But he doesn't do that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it on Ben for the moment. It's not the Ben criticism show or analysis show. I'm not sure I fully agree with your take, but yeah, I'll let you keep it. What can I say?
Right. So I went hunting this past weekend. Unfortunately, I didn't get anything because
they're bloody useless. You don't know how to shoot.
animal. I know how to shoot. The animals are fucking skittish all hell. Because believe it or not, Jonathan, I'm an ethical hunter, so I shoot when I know that it will be an instant death. I don't shoot to wound or any of that shit. But anyway, so I went to spoke to the farmer. Well, I go there at least twice a year, so I know him very well. I spoke to the farm workers and things like that. Every year, the guy buys one or two more guns for his farm. There was a farm attack a few kilometers away from him. The farm workers are also getting really, really scared and worried. So yeah. And if you speak to people in the countryside, I always find rural people somehow have more of a sense of the reality on the ground than urban people. It could just be it's very anecdotal, of course, and it's a bias that I hold. But having grown up on a farm and knowing a lot of farmers and knowing a lot of people who live and work in rural areas, there's always a sense that these people are far wiser than the idiots who populate our radio broadcasts and pollute our column spaces. And that's something I just want to tap into about the sort of street smart common sense wisdom, really, of people who are not in cities.
Yeah, so I mean, I just maybe it's who you generally fraternize with in cities, because I would argue that if you in the city and you go to places with common people, as you kind of alluding to on a farm, you're going into a farm and you're finding farm workers. These are not high income, high net worth individuals, and they're just getting on with their lives and they're trying to get by. If you find similar people in the city, my experience at least is you will find very similar things, and you find very similar attitudes. You forget that the sort of narrative and the social space is dominated by people who either control media platforms. So, what gets reported and what gets seen is what the editor at Mail and Guardian and EWN and wherever else is deciding to show you. What gets discussed is what Eusebius McKaiser and his producer decide to discuss on any given day. And, what comes out on social media is influencer based, essentially. I mean, these are people either pushing stuff that is going to give them social clout or going to earn them money in some way. So, what you're doing in those sort of spaces is really you're kind of sitting at Santon City and going, yeah, all these people are the people that represent the country, and you do the same thing on social media when you listen to what Ferial's pushing today, or what 702 is pushing today, or whatever it happens to be, or what an MP is pushing today. You're not hearing the voices of the average people, and I do think that both in the cities and rurally, you can find those voices, and they are interesting in that they're not interested in most of the crap that's being spouted.
Yeah, but you see the way these people talk about the holy cows. Like if you spoke like they do in a public setting in the urban areas, you'll be at the Human Rights Commission every week. It's almost strange. So it's sort of, how can I explain? So there's a lot of racially tinged epithets as such, but you sort of understand that this person is 70 years old and grew up with that sort of lexicon, with that sort of way of speaking about other people, without too much nuance. It's very binary. And sometimes you're like, you know what? It's actually so great that someone is so honest with their speech. It's a weird feeling. I knew it growing up on a farm, but going back once or twice a year, you're like, okay, so the reality is this: people actually can do and say whatever the fuck they want, and nothing bad happens. And maybe it's something we could, learn from in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose perhaps we could. Do you think we will? Do you think that's likely?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to turn into a racist overnight by any means, but no, I think we should be a bit more forthright about what we want and what we believe in.
So it's interesting you talk about being forthright, and there's this funny thing, because sometimes people are forthright and they express themselves about things we're not happy about. So Zinzi Mandela, she expressed herself last week. She was forthright. I think she was honest about what she was saying. I don't think she was necessarily right, but I'm saying I think she believes that. I think she believes it's the truth, which is essentially that white people don't belong in South Africa, that we're all basically here as uninvited guests, and we don't belong here. And I'm very happy she said that. I think that's a position that she holds. I think it's a position that many of the people in our government hold, currently at least. And I do think that there's a subset of the population that hold that opinion and that view. You can't possibly view farm attacks as any kind of motivated politically motivated issue if you don't believe that to be the case. I would rather have those views out in the open, even though, as I say, I disagree with them. But forthright, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, like I said on Twitter, it's like, don't be surprised when people are honest about what they think about you. It's
Look,
weird.
she's Winnie Mandela's daughter, right? I mean, Winnie Mandela was not a nice person. Like, she's an unsavory character.
As I said on Twitter, what do you expect from Winnie's spawn?
Oh, yeah,
People get really upset with that. I don't know why, because literally, I mean, we are all spawns of Jan fucking van Riebeck, like 500 years later. But she's a literal spawn of an evil woman, now that's a problem. But don't be surprised when people tell you how honestly what they think of you. I think it's great. I think more people should be more forthright in this manner. What's interesting though is the reaction by the journalists. I saw a headline, and I'm not joking, Mandela's outbursts bring freedom of speech under the spotlight. Are you fucking shitting me? Freedom of speech. Getting attacked for being a racist person is not a freedom of speech issue. It's just being an arsehole. And you get called out for being an arsehole all the time. So, somehow, when we say something, it's never a freedom of speech issue, right? It's always about violence, and it's always about fucking being arseholes and things like that. But if it's Zinzi Mandela saying it, oh, now, freedom of speech is under attack if you attack her, are you fucking serious?
Yeah, it's just the way they do things. It's take any situation and turn it into some way to push your narrative or your agenda, right? So Zinzi Mandela says a whole bunch of abhorrent things, which in my opinion she should be allowed to say. I'm very happy she said them. We now all know what type of person she is, and the big bonus that comes along with that is a whole bunch of people jump on the bandwagon and protect her, so we know what people they are as well. This is why freedom of speech is so great. And that happens, but the way that it gets spun is the response is where the problem is. And what are we going to use it to do? We're going to use it to try and limit free speech even more. I just saw today someone I hate talking about because I think she's possibly one of the most vacuous individuals on the planet, but Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who today compared the detention centers that the United States has set up for the hundreds of thousands of immigrants now flooding their southern border with Mexico. She compared them to Holocaust concentration camps. And instead of, moderate people on the left saying, look, I think that's probably a bit of an unfair comparison. Firstly, because you're trying to get Trump, but actually those detention centers were started by Obama. So if you want to get both presidents, great, but cool. And secondly, and more importantly, there's absolutely no comparison between Holocaust concentration camps and detention centers for illegal immigrants flooding the border, which the Congress won't fund because they'd rather those people get released into the inland of the country. But that's the whole point. Take an issue, immigration, people flooding the border, detention centers, and try and spin it into something for your agenda. And if you need to invoke the Holocaust and disrespect the memory of those people who were murdered, no problem, because it's all for the greater goal.
Yeah, I do like it. So the Jews are to be hated because they control capital and they pollute the world and etc. But then, as soon as the Holocaust is invoked, Jews are you know, a class of people that should be, we should be worried about, and look what happened to them. So you can't really win with the left in this situation. Jews are very evil and kill Palestinian babies, or they are, an example of what could happen if you have a tyrannical government. It's never in between. But I do like some hot takes to AOC's tweet, notably one that says, actually, Auschwitz was a mixture of work and extermination camps. So she's not completely wrong. Like, yes, well done.
What a hill to die on.
Yeah, actually, Auschwitz wasn't that bad.
What a hill to die on.
It was a work camp too, Jonathan.
I think that was a CNN journalist that tweeted that, if I'm not mistaken.
It was Andrew, unpronounceable Polish surname.
Yes,
Kurinsky.
The guy who produces K-File, and which is one of their shows. And it's just unbelievable that anyone would come to that kind of defense instead of just saying, look, I agree with your general position here, but I think you've kind of jumped the shark on the comparison. It's unbelievable how they'll double down, and this is why they're going to lose 2020.
Yeah, the fake news media is the enemy of the people, and there we go. I do wonder what the Danish think about this. I don't think they give a shit at all that they can't even point to South Africa on a map. I mean, most South Africans can't point to South Africa on a map anyway. But it would be interesting to see what the Danish
when you've got a sovereign
thinks.
when you've got a sovereign wealth fund 3 times the size of our entire country, I don't think you should have to be able to point to us on a map. Frankly, we don't matter. This is the thing. It's one of the problems we have here is we keep wanting to believe we matter when we haven't proven that we should. We keep unproving it. So it's like there used to be reasons why we should matter. We used to be major gold producers, for example. We now not that, and we're not even number 1 in Africa. Ghana took that away from us last week. We used to produce good arms. Denel used to produce some of the best cannons in the world. Some of the best aircraft equipment. We don't do that anymore. Where we want to talk about sports. We had obviously Graham on last week. We don't do anything good in sports anymore. So frankly, you don't get respect, and you don't get known just because you exist. You get known because people should take note of you because you've done something extraordinary or something worthwhile. And we're not doing anything worthwhile.
No, that's very true. And for those people who really think Donald Trump is somehow going to invade and save us from the evil communist ANC, you have another thing coming. I see a lot of people who are not really, friends of mine, but they're like, oh, don't worry, Donald Trump will come and invade and, bomb us back to freedom and democracy. Yeah, no, I don't. Donald Trump doesn't know us at all or care about us at all. So I think we should put away that notion that the Americans are coming to save us, because the Americans put the ANC in power, once the wall fell. So don't expect them to come back anytime soon, which is not worth it. There's nothing here to exploit, and there's nothing here to build. There's just another African country. I mean, if they were worried about human rights in Africa, they would have fucking, neocon the shit out of Mali like 20 years ago, but they haven't done that.
Or Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria is a massive oil wealth, and frankly, if you could achieve what America achieved in terms of oil out of Iraq. You could achieve that in Nigeria with pretty much no bloodshed. You kill a little bit of Al-Shabaab or one of those related groups, but other than that, you could achieve that with pretty much putting the United States military a couple of platoons down, and that would be it. No, I don't think they're coming to save us. I think they could care any less. We have nothing to offer them, and they'll watch us slowly slide into nothingness, and they couldn't care any less. I mean, they don't really care about Venezuela. It's a good political baseball bat in a way, because Venezuela is socialism tested again and failed. And so it's useful for the right in America to go look at Venezuela, it's a mess, and it's useful occasionally for, Mike Pence or Mike Pompeo to sort of say something about Venezuela and how they're a failed state, because it sort of knocks on Bernie, and it knocks on Elizabeth Warren, and it knocks on sort of the Democratic Party. But truthfully, they're not going to do anything about that place. They're going to leave it. They'll leave it until eventually it either completely collapses and they can install someone new without too much effort, or they'll leave it and not worry about it because it's no big deal to them.
Yeah, irony about Venezuela. Richard Branson had like a huge concert there in Colombia, just across the border from Venezuela, in favor of Guaido, who's the social democrat opposition to whatever his name is. Fuck, I've gone a blank. What's his name?
Maduro.
There you go, Maduro. And then the money from that concert somehow has disappeared. Guaido's allies and himself took the money to live the high life in Miami. Isn't that great? Here's your savior. It sounds a lot like, like South Africa in a way. 300 million rand stolen from Nelson Mandela's funeral. And nothing fucking happened. And then you still have people saying, oh, vote for the ANC, so on the bigger mandate. You're voting for people who stole 300 million rand from the funeral of arguably our greatest statesman in the eyes of the world. Not me personally. I think he was necessary for the time, but he wasn't fantastic. But you want a bigger mandate for people who stole 300 million rand from the great statesman of South Africa. It actually boggles my fucking mind about the mediocrity that we support in this country is absolutely mind-boggling. It is not even the low expectations or what soft bigotry of low expectations. I think it's pure racism at this point. It just is. They're blacks. They don't really know what to do. But Cyril speaks a bit better English than Zuma, so he's better. And look, he was in business. He's like one of us white people. He's a billionaire by being a capitalist and an entrepreneur. Meanwhile, that didn't really happen. And we just settle for mediocrity all the fucking time. It's it's no wonder we are where we are at the moment.
I wonder if we actually know what excellence looks like. I work in the state sector, and I often wonder this. I'm not sure if we know what excellence looks like. I'm not sure if we would be able to find it because I don't think we recognize it anymore. And so we have the same problem with our politicians. It's like, don't vote for the absolutely worst guy possible. Vote for, like, he was on the 7th level of hell. Vote for the guy on the 6th level of hell. It's like pick your demons. And we have no idea what like actual good would look like. I don't think this is untrue of politics in general, by the way, worldwide.
Yeah.
I do think, it's not like, Trump, for example, is not like, he's not an angel. And this is a repeated point. He's not an angel, but it's like, it was a case of, in the last election, certainly picking your poison. And people picked him as their poison, as a more suitable poison than Hillary Clinton. Same here, we do the same thing, but at least there's that kind of a modicum of a level of what you're meant to do. For example, the economy has to grow. The economy, if you're an American president going into an election with a declining American economy, or a failing American economy, any kind of recession on the cards, you are losing your re-election bid. And if your sort of VP or whoever is standing for election, they're losing. Whereas here, there doesn't seem to be any kind of, there is no level, right? So we don't have a grade, obviously, because, well, it's just whoever the ANC is going to pick. But there's no sort of marker for what you need to have achieved. We long ago dropped the whole belief that they have to have certain skills or certain degrees. We've dropped the idea that they have to have a proven track record. I suppose this is why if you reading Peter Bruce, you would have believed, oh well, Cyril maybe takes us up this peg, right? Because he is sort of educated and he has a track record and all of these sort of arguments for him. The problem is that whole part about him actually being in Jacob Zuma's government, like his deputy president, and not doing anything. Him actually running the Eskom war room, I think in 2014, and look where we are in 2019. No better. In fact,
hey, we got electricity. What? That's an improvement. Don't take it away from the ANC, please. Look, there's lights and internet, and like we're talking over this internet thingy. Improvement. Thank you, Cyril.
Yes. We it is very important to thank them for having bread, even though we don't know what steak tastes like anymore. But yes, great. Thanks for the bread.
Yeah, I actually had a great point, but yes, excellence. I know what excellence looks like. Actually, to be honest, excellence is the thousands of families that move away from these shores every year. Excellence is, Dr. Christian Barnard performed the first heart transplant in the world, only to find out 50 years later by Mrs. Zinzi Mandela herself that actually he learned this groundbreaking heart surgery from his gardener. Did you know that, Jonathan? Because I was shocked to find that out.
I do know this.
Obviously,
I do know the story.
obviously my historical curriculum was deeply, deeply colonized. So I don't know the real story. I mean, do you know the real story? The Black Gardener taught Christian Barnard this life-saving and revolutionary way to do surgery.
Yeah, it's funny how stories evolve. So the sort of story behind that is that there was a guy at UCT who was a groundskeeper essentially, and he used to go into the anatomy labs, and he did this for many years, and he learned anatomy essentially because he used to go study in the anatomy labs in his sort of spare time, his lunch hour, as far as I understand. There's a book written about this guy many years ago. I sort of read excerpts of it, and he would study the anatomy, and then he actually ended up dissecting cadavers, and he learned a fair amount of stuff. And this guy was around at the same time as Christian Barnard, and when they were kind of testing their systems on how they were going to do the transplant, and they were doing this in the cadaveric labs and all of that kind of stuff. This guy was kind of around at the time. So that's where this sort of story comes from, that this guy taught Christian Barnard how to do a heart transplant, which is not the case at all. It was originally a nice story about how a guy who hadn't had the opportunities, obviously, had learnt this, had become quite knowledgeable in anatomy, and how some people would come to him and they would have discussions, anatomical discussions about certain specific things, and he was quite knowledgeable about this stuff. But yes, to take it to that next level and sort of say that's someone who we should be very proud of, in fact, Christian Barnard, certainly for his contribution to medicine.
Right. And kudos to the guy who learned anatomy by himself. I couldn't do that. I'm a moron, And you try to teach me, go into a lab, I'll, burn it down within 2 hours. I don't know what to do. So, kudos to the guy. But let's be honest about his his contributions to the revolutionary surgery, for God's sake. Don't say that, oh, Christian Barnard appropriated his fucking knowledge. Come on. It's ridiculous. But yes, excellence is Christian Barnard. Excellence in a certain area is Helen Ziller. As a premier, she's probably the best one we ever had in terms of the economy, in terms of healthcare. A bit too much nanning for my liking, and we've spoken about this before. But she was an excellent premier for her time, and now she's being demonized. What else is excellent? I'm trying to think.
I heard Punzile's right hook is excellent. Allegedly, she's got an excellent
left one, because the right one is a bit, it's a bit. You don't want a right wing, you want a left. It's a bit stronger, I suspect.
I think your point about the people leaving the country is a fair point. We have skilled people. It's not a race issue either. They're of all races who are now leaving, because the middle class obviously makes up all races. Those people are going to countries that only accept people generally based on some skill of need. So
it's a point system, right?
You can't go to Australia as a gardener, for example. You can go as a farmer, perhaps, but not as a sort of standard guy who turns the weeds. These are people going to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, the UK, and they're leaving as whatever it is. There are people in retail, there are people in services. There are people in accountancy and medicine and law and all of these areas, and they're leaving. And that's excellence that's leaving, because those are people that contribute to the economy. That's I suppose gets back to what we were talking about earlier with is there any hope left? I would say every time one of those people gets on a plane, less and less.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I know many people who have immigrated, and they do extremely well in those places, because guess what? They have a country with inclusive systems, inclusive political institutions, rule of law. It's almost like, the system actually matters for something, Jonathan. I know it's weird, but I mean, if there's very little crime, the government relatively leaves you alone, taxes are equal and apply everywhere, and corruption is low. It's almost like, South Africans, you know, do quite well. I know it's a weird thing, but it's an amazing thing as well. I mean, it would be such a shame if we try to emulate that here, but apparently it's a bit too difficult for us to do so.
Yeah, it's a bit of an oddity, I suppose. You do hear about that from people who leave and from foreigners. I heard it expressed by foreigners who are not South African, that they like employing South Africans because South Africans supposedly work quite hard. I've always found that quite odd. Why do we work harder than anyone else? It's strange, but it does seem to be something that's repeated. Certainly, I've heard it come from Australians and from Americans, and it's just odd that we can't seem to use that real advantage to get ahead in our own country.
Yeah, well, as I said, so a lot of people are asking in the chat here if we are ever think of emigrating. Listen, I've been thinking of immigration for quite a while. I've always said, maybe not, because I actually do like living here despite everything, and I think it might be the blueprint for a smaller sort of civic nationalist feudal state. De facto, of course. But I mean, if I needed to immigrate, as I said before, I have a few assets overseas, very small, but I have a European passport, which is its weight in gold. So I could leave tomorrow if things really happened. But for the moment, no, there's no real plans to immigrate. I still think chaos breeds opportunity. I still think there are good ways to make money. And ironically, the more people emigrate, the scarcer our skills become. So we can charge a lot more and leverage that onto the society. But the problem is a lot of other people might not be able to afford it. So it's a difficult equation to balance as well. But for now, I'm staying, but don't expect that to be, a final decision. We're still young, so.
I'm a slightly different boat. I do not have any citizenship anywhere else, so I am stuck here essentially.
Come on, can't you go to Israel as an honorary Jew? I mean, you are a Jew, like not even honorary. So I mean, can't you just go there and say, "Look, I'm a Jew"? You say a prayer and there you go. They give you a passport. That's what I heard.
It's a secular state, Ramon. You don't say a prayer. You just go there and register. But I suppose that would be an option. It's not a top of my options list. I like it as a country to visit. I don't particularly have any aspirations to live there. But another thing to say is that there is almost nothing harder to emigrate as from South Africa as a doctor. It is incredibly difficult.
Excuse me, try be a lawyer. And then
the difference is that law opens yourself up to, so you could go do corporate law, for example, and it doesn't really necessarily apply to, there's sort of international principles, and then you could, go do corporate law in a firm and move across to one of their international branches, and that would work fine. And
like that, Jonathan. I'll just move to corporate law tomorrow.
I know several people who've done that.
Be perfect, like in a year, be the master expert at corporate law in America.
Maybe you just suck at law, Ramon. I'm saying. But you don't. But in fact, we must talk about that next. There are, I suppose, because you are dealing with people's lives, every country has its own rules, and they make it particularly difficult, especially once you are more specialized. So, on the cards, but not exactly a simple task.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are in that same situation, and it irritates me because, like, I know a guy who's an electrician who moved over to Australia, and he was like, he got it made, he got a job before he landed.
if you were to do retail sales on the floor of Edgar's, and you worked there for a little while, and you've got a bit of a track record, you can move to Australia tomorrow. Um, they got tons of jobs for you, and you'll get a job overnight, and they'll probably give you a visa because they need people in those jobs. And similar to the States, they sort of have a deficit in jobs versus number of people they actually have to fill those jobs. So there are certain things where certainly trades and certainly retail are things where you can easily move across, and business obviously. If you're in some sort of business department or whatever, and a lot of my friends have done that. Yeah, look, there are opportunities. You've got to find the gap. There's no such thing as can't. And
Yes.
if it's something you want to do, then it's something you should do. I think you should follow Magnus Haystack's advice at least, which is that if you stay here, he tweeted the other day that anyone who is in South Africa and has spare change lying around in rands is an absolute moron, and they deserve everything they get. Those were
Right.
pretty much his words, and not mine.
And to have a pension in South Africa, you're a fucking lunatic. Because
Yeah,
they have to invest 75% in South African shit, which has been losing against the JSE like 10 years in a row. So you're not making money on your pension, and your investments are up to shit if they're not offshore. So what the fuck are you doing? Investing your money in South Africa? It's just put it overseas, like he's done. He put everything overseas, lives in a great house, drives a Ferrari. No, I think he sold his Ferrari, and I just like talk shit on Twitter and makes lots of money anyway. Like that's the ideal scenario. Like not having any assets here, really, just spending money.
yeah. Look, I think though people are quite thoughtful. If you're raising a family, for example, I think those are concerns that people have, and they are very real concerns. I think if you're an adult and you're established and you've sort of made your way in life a little bit, you're probably fine, and you'll hedge against everything. You'll hedge your money, and you'll install solar panels to hedge against Eskom, and you'll install a water purifier to hedge against a failing municipality. Who knows how to bill your rates but doesn't know how to do anything else. But you can't hedge against your kid not getting into university because of a demographic issue, and you can't hedge against them not getting a job for the same issue. So those are things that I think are legitimate concerns for people, and
Yeah. So if I
I
may just
fully
interrupt,
understand.
I think personally speaking, the internet is your great savior here. So if you can't go anywhere, your kid can be taught online for a third of the price of any school in South Africa. Universities are there to indoctrinate and to do all sorts of other things rather than teach. Personally, okay, unless you want STEM or medicine, I mean, so the standards are still fairly high, but really, you don't need a degree to be a graphics designer, to be a website designer, to be a shit hot programmer, to be an e-commerce specialist, to be an SEO specialist, to be a specialist anything online. You don't need physical premises to go and be trained at. You can do all of this online. The what you call it, the fiber network in South Africa is privatized, so it will remain a long time, even if the government doesn't. As long as you pay for your fiber or your internet or whatever the case might be, you could be fine. You could have an online business. Doesn't need to be BEE. You can supply services to the rest of the world. You can earn in foreign currency with all these payment options available. So, I mean, I think to be fair, there are solutions to the problems we face here. It's just about actively looking for them and realizing that you don't play into the system. You don't follow their rules. You don't go BE. You don't apply to become a fucking. You don't have businesses with large mass working force. You don't apply the labor laws. You don't pay your tax because you get paid overseas. All these options are available to you, and I think you should exploit them as much as possible.
Yeah, look, I think it's difficult sometimes, though. I think there are some ways you can do that, and sort of proof yourself. But there are some things where there's just no way. I mean, family member who's in hardware, it is no way to sell bricks without hiring some guys to like drive the forklift, put the bricks onto the truck, deliver the bricks to the the client. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, your clients are going to transfer rands into your account, and then you've got to pay the tax on that. So there are some ways you can do it, and I would agree with you in some respects, but I think a lot of people find it very difficult. And having owned a small business myself in the past, I can tell you that you can try ignore the BE stuff, but you just can't get business. It's unbelievable how pernicious it is. So you go to someone and you want to sell them your product, and then they want to know like your BE status, or they want to be able to say that your supplier status as a BE supplier contributes to their status with their suppliers, or whoever they're supplying. It's just a mess, and unfortunately, it's not as simple as ignoring all of the stuff. You can try in some areas, but you can't function completely by doing that.
Yeah, well, remember what's his name? Hotep Jesus told us on our podcast, right?
Still one of the craziest podcasts. If you haven't listened to that one, please go back. I was speechless for half that podcast.
Yeah, the guy's a Hotep, so he's like it's a sort of black nationalist capitalist guy. Spend your money in black businesses and all this sort of stuff, and a big Trump supporter and all that, which is great. And then I said, yes, but Hotep, it's not very easy. I mean, if you a black person during apartheid, there were policies against you. And he's like, what the fuck's a policy? He gives a fuck about a stupid policy. Just do what you need to do to get ahead. I'm like, that is true in a way, but that's the pernicious government regulation. The problem is like, no, fuck the policies, ignore them completely, hedge your bets, and then go ahead and make money. I'm like, there is actually very few excuses these days. I know that's a very flippant comment, especially when lots of people are losing jobs left, right, and center in a declining economy. But I think if the country is failing, which it is, now is the best time for it to fail, because there are many other opportunities to take advantage of. That's all.
Okay, let's get to some questions quickly before we wrap up. So, yes, I know Mike's shit. Ramon promised to buy me one, but he hasn't. He says, cheap bastard.
I did.
You did. So someone asked about UBI, Andrew Yang, all of that shit. Guys, I don't find Andrew Yang impressive. Like, seriously, I get the hard on a lot of you people have for Tulsi Gabbard. I don't personally like her either, but I at least get like why you would like Tulsi Gabbard. Andrew Yang is just the most vanilla Democrat you can possibly have in a year where you've got a whole bunch of batshit crazy Democrats. So he seems like he's actually like pretty cool, because he's not like trying to fight for like transgender children and weird shit. He's just saying like, let's continue what we've always done as the United States. Plus, what about this UBI thing? So no, I don't think Andrew Yang's UBI is such a great idea. I don't like UBI in principle. I think it's repackaged social welfare. I do not believe everyone's going to become a poet if you give them $1,000 a month. That's a bullshit belief. It doesn't happen that way. No, I don't believe AI is going to destroy our entire existence. Truck drivers was an advanced job in 1920. It's not an advanced job anymore. Drone repairman is an advanced job in 2019. It won't be advanced in 2050. So no, the robots are not going to take over. We were told that we would have self-driving cars in 2017. That never happened. They're meant to have self-driving cars in 2021. Mark my words, that won't happen. So yeah, just calm down. Maybe in 2200 we've got this problem. It's a far way away, and we don't need to upend the entire way we do things in working civilizations to cover for that. So no, I don't think Andrew Yang's UBI is all that and a bag of chips. Ramon?
I actually think Andrew Yang is pretty great for the sole reason that he's solving an issue that he thinks is important. I don't think the issue is important. I'm not a techno pessimist like him, but UBI I don't like because basically you can, your opponent just says, well, this guy gives you $15,000, I'll give you 20. And we'd be like, yeah, I want $20,000 a year. And you'll just vote for you. Like, it's just a continuous cycle. And I think Naval Ravikant was on Joe Rogan last week, I think, or the week before. And that's a podcast everyone should listen to. And he was on about his thing about UBI is that we actually really underestimate how much we can actually teach people new skills. Especially in an internet economy, a gig economy like this. You don't need to be taught to be an Uber driver. You drive anyway, right? But people do it. Well, in South Africa it's a bit different, but people do it part time overseas, and do okay on it as a second or third job when the need arises. And he sees that's the future of work. Work is going to be a gig economy. So Jonathan's going to wake up in the morning and it'll be like, oh, do you want to do anesthetics for these 3 cases today? And you say, yeah, I'll do this one for 500 Rand and this one for 2,000 and this one for 3,000. And then they say yes or no. And then Jonathan might work 10 hours that day or might work 2 or not work at all. Basically, whenever his skills are needed, he'll work. When they're not needed, he won't work. And that is the future of work. In a developed society like America, here we need to first make sure we get past the first industrial revolution. But yes, Andrew Yang is great because he is articulate, he does understand the issues, and he is very persuasive. His arguments are good, but I don't think his solution is really worth considering at this time.
Yeah, I think he's going to get some kick after the debates. I think he will get look. Name recognition is what matters in the elections, so I think he will pick up a little bit after the debates. He will be on one of the debate stages in the first debates coming up. I don't think he's got a good chance of winning, but
No.
but yeah, he's putting his name out there. He may end up with a strong enough following to end up as a VP candidate. It depends who ends up as the presidential candidate.
So, what do you think about the solidarity building universities for Afrikaners? Personally, I think it's brilliant.
Brilliant.
They're spending what, 4.5 billion Rand on like a huge project that covers. I haven't read the document. I just saw headlines. I think it's fantastic. I think they're privatizing education. They are once again they're taking over government services because they know long term the health of their membership is going to be defined by what solidarity does, and they're not putting their faith in the court system. They're not putting their faith in the political system. They're not putting their faith in the economy. They're putting their faith in themselves and their members, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And more people should emulate that, and that should be an example to everyone else.
The only problem that's going to arise is, I think it's great. I think it's brilliant. I think that's the answer to everything. Private industry, this private sector doing all of this stuff. But the problem that's going to arise for them is the government will just pass a law that will say there's no such thing as a private university anymore. Government has to own 51%, and the government will just take it over ultimately. So they're ultimately going to invest all this money, and they're going to lose it. That's, in my perspective, what's going to happen. Remember, this is going to be a communist state. They will own all the means of production. Therefore, there will be no such thing as private in the end of the day. But in the meantime, it's a good idea.
Yeah, but once again, it's about enforcing the law rather than just passing it. They can pass it easily. Can they enforce it in any meaningful way? I don't know. With people that have 4.5 billion Rand to spend, which is a lot of money if you want private militias, you can pass the law, but it doesn't mean that it will actually be enforced in any meaningful way. It only gets enforced because crony, nepotistic corporates fall in line. So for example, Discovery or apps or whatever go BE, and then all those suppliers need to go BE, and they enforce that. Then those suppliers have to go BE, and then essentially, once the corporate adopts it, everyone else has to adopt it to feed the corporate something, a service or good or something like that. That's how these laws actually get enforced. They're getting enforced by the private sector, not by the public sector in any way, because they've got such a hold on the corporates through the FSB and licensing deals and all that shit. I mean, do you think how many dicks Discovery had to suck to get a banking license? Can you just fucking imagine what they had to do to get a banking license? And what happens when you get a banking license? Oh, these are all the conditions, 10% of all the shares need to go to only black people. Your BE must be this, your social, what's community social investment, whatever.
Responsibility, CSR.
Yeah, needs to go to these black orphanages and shit like that. So you can just imagine what you need to do to get licensed in this country. So as soon as the corporates undertake to follow the law to the rule, everyone else gets fucked. But solidarity doesn't need corporates. Solidarity doesn't need the government. Solidarity doesn't need anything except for their members, which they've got plenty of.
Look, now you're being romantic. The truth is when they run out of money, they will go looking for it. And if it's in private institutions, including solidarities, universities, they will find it and take it.
No, they'll take all the pensions money first, which is
but
mostly public servants. I don't give a shit.
They're only going to take 5 years to run out, Ramon, at most.
What do you mean? We've been run out for fucking 3 years now, Jonathan.
No, not the pension. The pension funds are still largely intact. Largely. Not completely, but largely intact.
But if you have a pension, you're fucking lunatic. Get out of it. It's true, though. It's true.
It's true.
A lot of people, well, one person is asking, where do I get my sexy voice? Second degree burns to the voice box is a good way to get my kind of voice. When I was 13, I swallowed a lot of smoke because I was being burnt alive through an explosion. It's a long story. Basically, that is the true story. I'm not taking
it. It is the true story. And I'm sorry to laugh at you, Ramon, and laugh at your pain.
First of all, yes, because first of all, I'm a gay, disabled gay Arab, right? Living in South Africa.
That's gay twice. Does that cancel out and then make you straight?
No. Gay Arab with a disability. Now, all I need is a right winger to shoot my foot off. Then it's a hate crime. And then I can write books and go on TV and be a victim and go on Oprah. It's going to be great. So if you have any right-wing friends, you want to shoot me in the foot, send them my way.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think I need to call it a night.
Really? Do you have to? Okay.
What have we got? We got a little bit more?
No, we don't. Can I just ask everyone? I actually forgot to put it in here. To finalize our survey, or take our survey rather. We are trying to do a thing on the show whereby we want your input. For the first time in 3.5 years, we actually do give a shit what you think, whereas before we didn't. But we're sort of finalizing what we want the show to be going forward. And the best way to do that is to actually ask you bastards what you think. So let me just put it here. Please just follow that survey and fill it in.
And if you're listening on the podcast, obviously, Ramon, is it on our website?
And it is on our website, renegadereport.co.za/about-us/survey. I don't know who put it there. That's a very long name, but it is there. So we've got over 100 people so far. Obviously, we need a lot more just to get a sense of what people like, what they don't like. Apparently, they don't like me vaping and the fact that I do CrossFit. I should be put to death for either of those things.
The vaping I get, but the CrossFit, because the vaping we can hear on the bloody microphone. I mean, that's the problem.
Well, I muted it. But I do think we should speak about the fallout from the Graham Joffe interview, though, very quickly.
Oh, yes. Okay, let's do that quick.
Right. So we had Graham Joffe on. He was very good. Highbury Media, which owns like SA Rugby and it publishes a whole lot of magazines. And they're like sort of like the corporate media partner of Sascock, or they were until they sued them like 2 months ago.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Saru as well. I think they're also
that's true
media partners there. Yeah.
So they sent us a letter to state that we are in contempt of court because Graham Joffe said defamatory things on our podcast, which goes against a court order that they obtained in 2015. So I phoned Graham. I said, "What the hell is this court order?" He gave me a long story. So I said, "Okay, fine." We responded and we said that we have no intention of being in contempt of court. Let us know what was said that was defamatory, and we may change it. But we need to know if it's defamatory and it falls under the court order, because the court order refers to a blog post that has been deleted in 2014. So we could have no possible idea that it was defamatory because it just doesn't exist anymore. So I'm waiting for a response. And I did get one, but it's a bit, they say it's self-explanatory and it's not at all. So I'm waiting for a response. But if we get sued, we need your money now more than ever. So I think it's a good time to segue into supporting us because we are fighting for free speech in a country where whistleblowers are killed and sent overseas. We want to stay here before we immigrate with your money that you'll give us. renegadereport.co.za/support-us.
Oh, that's also a long link, Ramon. Just go to the website, renegadereport.co.za. You can find all the stuff on the website following the tabs or the links. As always, you can find us on Facebook, both the page and the group, on Twitter at renegade_report. Some fun things happening with Pumzile Van Dam there currently, so please do follow us. Ramon at Roman Kavanagh, myself at Jonathan_Witt. As always, thank you for watching. This is the monthly live stream, and if you've downloaded this during the week sometime, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.